Hey everyone, welcome to part 88 of my Pokemon game series Ingenuity. So in this video, we'll implement ledge jumps. So if I walk towards a ledge like this, then it'll make the player jump by 2 tiles, okay? And I won't be able to walk over the ledge from the opposite side, all right? I'll only be able to walk over it from this side. So let's look at how to implement this. You can support the making of this series by becoming a Patreon and get some cool rewards for it, like access to the complete project files of the series, exclusive tutorials that are not covered on YouTube, and access to the Discord community. So before we start, I want to say a huge thanks to all the Patreons who are currently supporting the channel. You guys make the series possible, and I'm grateful to each and every one of you. So let's start the video. So first, let's add some ledges to our map. So I'll open up the Route 1 scene. All right, and here I'll add some ledges. So let me go to my tile palette, and we have the ledges in our background tile palette. So the ledges should be drawn onto the solid objects tile map because it should block the player. So let's draw some ledges here. All right. Just make sure that you're drawing it to the solid objects tile map. Okay. And I'll also draw some ledges in the left and right direction. All right, so that should be enough for testing. So next, we need to add colliders on top of the ledges so that we can detect when player walks on it. So in the Route 1 scene, I'll create a new game object called ledge. Okay. And just to see this object from the scene view, I'll add a sprite renderer. All right. So this is just to visualize the colliders in the scene. We can go ahead and disable the sprite renderer when we start the game. All right. So let me change its sorting layer to foreground so that we can see it. And let me just move it on top of the ledge. Okay. So for the sprite, I'll just select a basic color image like this one. Okay. And I'll also reduce its alpha so that we can see through it. So let me set it to something like 40. All right. So this is going to be our collider. So let me just place it at the exact center of the tile. All right. And I'll also change the Z to 0. Okay. So next, I'll increase its X scale so that it will fit the entire ledge. So a value like 7 should be enough for the X scale. Okay. So next, let me actually add a box collider to this game object. So this box collider should help us to detect this ledge. Okay. So next, we should add a script to our ledge object. So in the scripts folder, inside gameplay, I'll create a new script called ledge. All right. So let me get rid of the default code from here. And in the script, we need variables to determine the direction of the ledge. All right. So first I'll create a serialized field variable for the X direction. And then I'll create another one for the Y direction. So now let's go ahead and attach the script to our ledge object. Okay. So this ledge is in the downward direction, right? So when the player walks on it from above, it should actually make the player jump downwards. So the Y direction of this ledge will be -1. All right. So now we have a game object for this ledge. So next, let's also create game objects for the left and right ledge. So first, let me actually turn the ledge game object into a prefab. So in the game folder, I'll create another folder called Overworld, and I'll drag and drop the ledge here to turn it into a prefab. So next, I'll duplicate this and create a game object for the left ledge. So let me set its X scale to 1, and I'll move it towards the center of the ledge. All right. And I'll set its Y scale to 3. So now the collider is covering the ledge properly. So next, we also need to set the direction of the ledge. So since this ledge is facing in the left direction, I'll set the X direction to -1, and the Y direction will be 0. Okay. So that's all we need to do for this ledge. So next, let's duplicate this and place it on top of the right ledge. All right. So the X direction of this one is going to be a +1. Okay. So now we have colliders on top of all our ledges. So just to keep things organized, I'll create a new game object here called ledges. And let me just reset its position. Okay. And I'll drag all our ledges under this game object just so that our scene view doesn't get cluttered. Okay. So next, let's write the code to make the player jump when the player walks on a ledge. So inside the ledge script, I'll create a new public function called try to jump. So this function will return a boolean, and it'll take the character and the direction in which the character is trying to move as the parameter. All right. So in this function, we should only make the character jump if the move direction is same as the direction of the ledge, right? So from here, I'll check if move direction dot x is equal to the x direction of the ledge, and the move direction of y is equal to the y direction of the ledge. Okay. So if that's true, then we should make the character jump and we should return true. And otherwise, we should return false. So next, to make the character jump, I'll call a coroutine called jump. So this coroutine will take the character as the input. All right. So next, let's define the jump coroutine. All right. So in this coroutine, first we should find the position to which the character should jump. So to find that, we can add the x direction and the y direction of the ledge to the current position of the character. All right. So to the current position, I'll add the x direction and y direction. So let me put them inside a vector so that we can add them. All right. And we should also multiply this vector by 2. The reason is because we want to make the player jump 2 tiles, right? So for example, if the player is over here and if he tries to walk to the ledge, then he should jump and reach here, right? So the player should cover 2 tiles in the jump. So we have to multiply this vector by 2. Okay. So let me store the result of this in a variable called jump destination. All right. And then we can make the character jump by using the doTween function called doJump. So to use this function, we have to import tg.training namespace. All right. So here, the end value of the jump will be the jump destination that we calculated. Next, for the jump power, I'll pass something like 0.3. Next, the number of jumps should be 1. And finally, for the duration, I'll pass something like 0.5 seconds. Okay. And we also want this function to wait. So I'll call wait for completion. And I'll add yield return at the start. So this should make the player jump 2 tiles. So next, while jumping, we should not allow the player to move by using the arrow keys, right? So what we can do is, while the player is jumping, we can change the state to something like paused so that the user won't be able to control the player. So from here, we can change the game state to paused by calling gameController.instance.pauseGame, and I'll pass true for the value of pause. Okay. And once we finish jumping, we can go ahead and unpause the game by calling pause game and passing false. Okay. So this is all we have to do to make the player jump. So next, we can call the try to jump function if the player is trying to walk on a ledge. So inside the character script, in the move function, we can check if the target position to which the player is moving is actually a ledge. So I'll create a new function to check that. So I'll call this function check for ledge, and it'll take target position as the input. All right. So from this function, I'll use an overlap circle to check if there is a ledge at the target position. So let me call physics2d dot overlap circle. All right. So for the point, I'll pass the target position, and I'll set the radius to something like 0.15. Okay. And finally, we have to pass a layer. So we haven't created a layer for the ledges yet. So let's go ahead and create that. So I'll go to Unity and I'll add a new layer called ledges. All right. And then inside the ledges prefab, I'll change its layer from default to ledges. Okay. So now all our ledges should be in the ledges layer. So next, we also need to add the ledges layer in our game layer script so that we can access it from anywhere in our code. So here, I'll create another variable called ledge layer. And let me also create a property to expose it. All right. So now in the overlap circle for finding the ledge, we can pass the ledge layer for the layers. Okay. So this function will return a collider. So let me just store that in a variable. All right. And from the collider, we can get the ledge component by calling the get component function. Okay. And let me also add a null conditional operator over here so that in case the collider is null, we won't get an exception. All right. So we can just return the value of this. Okay. So now let's call this function from the move function to check if there is a ledge at the target position. So I'll call check for ledge and I'll pass the target position. Okay. So let me store the return value in a variable called ledge. And if the ledge is not equal to null, then that means the player is actually trying to move towards the ledge. So in that case, we can call ledge dot try to jump to try to make the player jump. All right. So to this function, we have to pass the character and the move direction. So I'll just pass it this keyword for the character since we are in the character script itself. Okay. And for the move direction, we can pass the move vector. All right. So if this function returns true, then that means the player will jump over the ledge. So in that case, we don't have to execute any of the code below. So we can just exit this coroutine by calling heal break. Okay. So this will make the player jump when he tries to walk on a ledge. So before we test this, there is one more thing I want to do. So right now, these green sprites that we have on our ledge, it's just for visualizing the colliders of the ledge in the scene view, right? So when we start the game, we should hide the sprites by disabling the sprite renderer. So let's go ahead and do that from the awake function of the ledge script. All right. So let me create the awake function here. And from here, I'll get the sprite renderer by using the get component function. And then I'll go ahead and disable it. Okay, so that should hide the sprites. So now let's go ahead and test the game. So before we test, we have to assign the ledges layer in our game player script. So let me go inside the essential objects, and in the game layers, I'll assign the ledge layer. All right, so now let's go ahead and test. So let me go to the route 1 scene. Okay, so here I can't walk through the ledge from this direction. All right, but if I try to walk on it from the other direction, you can see that the player is jumping. All right, let's also test the other ledges. Okay, so the player is jumping on all the ledges. The only problem is we don't have an animation to play when the player is jumping. But there is one thing we can do to improve this a little. So if you open the sprite sheet of our player, here we don't have an animation for jumping. So right now it's just showing the idle sprite when we are jumping. But we can make this look a little better if we show the last frame of the walk cycle instead of showing the idle frame. All right. So this is just a hack since we don't have a sprite for the jump animation. All right, so let's go ahead and use that. So let me open the character animator script. Okay, and here I'll create a new property called isJumping. And in the update function, if isJumping is true, then we can set the sprite to the last frame of the current walking animation. So let me just copy this line and paste it over here. And here, instead of assigning the first frame, we should assign the last frame, right? So we can get the index of the last frame from current anim dot frames dot count -1. All right. And here I'll change the condition to else if so that we won't execute this if the character is jumping. So now when we make the character jump, we can also set is jumping to true. So here I'll say character dot animator dot is jumping equal to true. And once the jumping is over, we can set it back to false. Okay, so now let's go ahead and test it. Okay, so now when I jump, you can see that it's showing the last sprite of the current animation. Okay, so it doesn't look perfect, but it looks much better than using the idle sprite while jumping. So if you have jumping sprites in your sprite sheet, then you can go ahead and use that. So we have implemented the ledge jump. So I'll stop the video here. If you think this video is helpful, please leave a like and consider subscribing to my channel. That'll really help me out. So I'll see you in the next video.